Ladies, thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. Right now, a quiet but massive political war is playing out between France and several African nations. On the surface, international news makes it look like standard political disagreements or routine diplomatic back and forth. But if you look beneath the surface, it has become incredibly personal. French President Emmanuel Macron is currently locked in a tense, quiet standoff with multiple African leaders. And it all boils down to broken alliance, secret counter strategies, and deep-seated political grudges. To truly understand why this is happening, we have to look closely at what recently went down in a region known as the Sahel, specifically focusing on a coalition called the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. Not long ago, France and its regional alliance decided to put heavy pressure on these Sahel countries. They wanted to politically and economically isolate them to the point where they simply couldn't function. The ultimate goal was to force them into a corner by completely cutting off their supply lines. And for a minute, it looked like the plan was working perfectly. France and its allies managed to successfully shut down the ports of Cotonou in Benin. For a landlocked country like Niger, losing access to Cotonou was an absolute disaster. Niger relies heavily on that specific port to bring in goods, food, vital supplies, and fuel. By locking down that route, France essentially placed a financial stronghold on Niger, expecting the country to break under the pressure. The trap was set, and the economic oxygen was running out. But just when it seems like the Sahel States, AES, was completely cornered, Togo stepped into the picture and completely flipped the script. The president of Togo, Faure Yadama, did something that absolutely blindsided the French government. Instead of falling in line with the Western-backed sanctions and keeping his borders closed, President Faure Yadama chose a completely different path. He looked at the blockade and decided to throw a lifeline to the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. Togo stepped up and officially opened the gates of its own major port, the port of Lomé, specifically for Niger.
Macron does not like at all that the Togolese president helped the Alliance of Sahel States to free itself. He does not like at all that while he thought he had strangled Niger by closing the port of Cotonou, the port of Lomé opened for the Nigerians. Macron holds a grudge against the Togolese president for that. And President Faure Gnassingbé, who has extensive political experience, knows this perfectly well. Just as Emmanuel Macron naturally holds a grudge against Sassou Nguesso and Biapol for having taken a step too far towards Russia at one point. To say it in Cameroonian language, Macron has the macabre of these three presidents. That is to say, he holds a grudge against them. But what they wanted to tell him by not coming to his summit is that we also hold a grudge against you. You expect us, we expect you. Do you understand? There you have it. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line of the matter. They saw how Macron let down people who were known to be loyal to France, who in fact did not seriously challenge French interests. Ali Bongo, well, he fell simply because it was felt he was starting to speak too much English. That's all. And in Paris, that's a serious offense. What? He is bringing Gabon from Father Bongo into the Commonwealth.
We remove him. We remove him. We are going to obliterate him.
You know, the style in France is from, especially from Sarkozy to Macron, is a gunslinger style. Chirac was like that. Mitterrand was like that. French leaders, when they talk about Africa, they really talk about their backyard. They talk about a territory where they can act without respect for French law. They talk about a political safari, so the three leaders who didn't go, who dealt a diplomatic blow to Macron, it's a way of telling him, if you meddle in our succession affairs, if you meddle in our political affairs, well, you will further worsen the fate of France in our countries. That is to say, if you meddle further in our affairs, we will fully align with the AES position against you. We too will revolt. So it is very difficult for leaders who have been closely tied to the French political regime for a long time. It is very difficult for them to align with the position of the IES, but it is their means. It is their means of blackmail. And then, of these three countries, the one closest to the positions of the AES is naturally Togo under President Faure Gnassingbé.
This single, calculated move changed everything. Suddenly, the Strait blockade was completely useless. By routing their trade through Togo, Niger, and other Sahel states, were able to bypass the Cotonou shutdown entirely. Togo gave them a way to breathe again, effectively and strangling their economy and rendering the international sanctions toothless. Because of this single act, Emmanuel Macron is furious. He holds a massive, lingering grudge against the Togolese president, for Gnassingbé Yadama, for actively ruining France's geopolitical strategy. But President Gnassingbé is not a political amateur. He is a leader with vast, long-term political experience. He knew exactly how risky this move was. He knew exactly how much it will anger France. And he did it anyway. And the truth is, Togo is not the only country making France's leadership lose sleep. Macron is also holding a very bitter grudge against two other heavyweights on the continent. President Denis Sassou Nguesso of the Republic of the Congo and President Paul Biya of Cameroon. Why? Because at a highly critical moment, when France expected loyalty, both of these leaders made a definitive, powerful pivot towards Russia. They chose to strengthen their ties with Moscow, stepping further and further out from under France's traditional sphere of influence. In Cameroon, there is actually a perfect everyday slang term for this exact type of bitter, long-lasting resentment. They call it having the macabre, when someone is deeply bitter and holding a grudge against you because you didn't do what they wanted. They have your macabre. Right now, Macron has the macabre against these three specific presidents. But here is where the story hits its real climax. These African leaders realized exactly how much resentment was building up. And they decided to send a loud, undeniable message right back to Paris. Recently, Macron hosted a major high-profile summit. He expected all these African heads of states to travel to France, sit at the table, and participate in the usual diplomatic show. But when the summit started, the seats for Togo, Congo, and Cameroon were completely empty. The leaders pulled off a coordinated, silent boycott. By refusing to show up to his summit, they turned the tables completely. Their absence sent a crystal clear message to France. You hold a grudge against us for protecting our own interests? Well, guess what? We hold a grudge against you too. You expect us to always show up and answer your calls, but we expect you to respect our sovereignty. If you're going to hold resentment against us, we simply aren't going to show up for you anymore. And that is the absolute bottom line. The old era where European powers could easily dictate terms to the West African nations is hitting a massive wall. It is no longer just about economic treaties or signed paperwork. It has evolved into a direct pride-to-pride political standoff. African leaders are openly standing their ground, proving that the old rules of diplomacy are officially broken. So, because of this, according to Professor Nyamsen, France is holding this grudge against the president of Togo for Gnassingbé Yadama. And that was why ECOWAS or the CDO have to pass a ruling now that his presidency is no longer legit. And he has changed the constitution to remain in office forever. So for that matter, he has to step down. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall. And united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world. In Africa, West Africa, and in Togo.